Return to Silent Hill. It's a movie. I'm not going to sit here and be the typical ragebot.AI that's flying all over YouTube right now and screaming about the skies falling and how horrible of a movie this is. Honestly, it wasn't that bad. And if you don't like the movie, there's a fix for that. There is the remake you can go play, or you can play the original. Maybe the HD collection, but anyway, there's options. So I'm going to break this movie down in a few different areas, but I'm going to try to keep it somewhat short. I want to start off with the cast, and then I'm going to move into what they changed. I'll probably talk a little bit about what I liked and didn't like about the changes during that part. And finally, we're going to talk about what this means for the town of Silent Hill and the overall lore. So, the cast. First of all, we have to talk about Mary. Hannah Emily Anderson absolutely knocked it out of the park as Mary. I mean, her look, her voice, the way she carried herself, it felt like Mary. Like, I am shocked that they found somebody to portray Mary as well as they did. Now, as far as her Maria, that could have been better. Maybe cast somebody different there, but as we know, Mary and Maria are essentially the same person. It's kind of like the Batman syndrome. You know, like some actors were really good Batman, but not really good Bruce Waynes. But then you had some that were good Bruce Waynes and not really good Batman. So that's kind of where Hannah falls into the whole Mary and Marie thing. Fantastic Mary, okay Marie. And it might have just been that ridiculous wig that they put on her for Marie. That it looked bad. Then she also played Angela. I don't know where to go with that. I don't know. It wasn't a bad portrayal of Angela, but having the same actress play all three of those roles was an interesting choice. But it does make sense as far as the movie goes. Alright, from there, what is it? Jeremy Irvin. That's his name. He played James. And he wasn't a bad James per se. He didn't feel like James at the beginning. They changed a few character things about him, which I'm not sure needed to be changed, but they were changes nonetheless. He didn't really start feeling like James or even look like James until near the end with the scraggly hair and the dirt all over his jacket. I mean, overall, he didn't do a bad job as James. I just think maybe dyeing his hair blonde would have helped a bit. Maybe. But he wasn't bad as James. Who else was there in here? I mean, it's pretty much just those two. Oh, Evie. This is the girl that played Laura. And I don't know how they never miss with this character. Evie did a great job playing as Laura. She has the giant doe eyes, the mischievous smile. She's just, everything about her screams trouble. She did a great job as Laura. I don't know about that creepy doll thing that she had going on, but it wasn't bad overall. And then we had the guy who played Eddie. Not much to say there. He had like maybe a minute and a half of screen time. Eddie he's still kind of the fatso. I mean, what are we going to say about that? I think the only other character to really talk about is Nicole Alexis as M. Who the hell is M? I I know a lot about this game. I know a lot about the story and the lore of Silent Hill, and I don't recall an M. Maybe it's just skipping my mind right now, but I don't recall that character at all. Alright, that's pretty much everybody who actually matters as far as the cast goes. There were a bunch of other people in there. Some of the Order members, which we're going to talk about the Order soon too. But those are the ones that matter. And really, I do have to give... You have to tip your hat to Hannah Emily Anderson, because it felt like she put this movie on her back and she carried it the best she could. Fantastic actress. Like, I don't know where she's been my whole life, but I can see why James fell in love with her the moment he saw her. I mean, look at her. Just total girl next door. Okay. All that aside, things that they changed. So, a few things that we do have to remember here is that this is not the game. The continuities to the movie and in the game are completely different. They are, I mean, they're tied together. It's all based on the same material, but they are different. And we have to accept that, or at least acknowledge it. There wasn't a part of the movie where I thought, this isn't Silent Hill 2. Or this isn't necessarily James. There's a few points where it's like, is this James? But it always felt like James for the most part. They changed his occupation, which I thought was weird. It's almost like they thought we didn't know what he did. We know he was a clerk. He was an office clerk. There's actually a point in the game where you come across his desk. I think it's in the labyrinth is where you come across his desk. So we know he was a office clerk. But them changing him to an artist, specifically a painter, it actually really fits the character, the way he's portrayed in this movie. I mean, he's almost overly confident, really snobby. He's the artist type, right? So it fit him. I guess also maybe having a typical 9-to-5 office clerk job in 2025 may not be the norm. The original game took place in it's either the 70s or the late 80s, early 90s, somewhere around there. So that job was very common back then. But here we are, 30 some odd years later, things change. So it's kind of cool that they actually did change it to a more modern day setting. It made it feel a little bit more visceral. Something recognizable to a lot of people who are probably going to see this movie or even play the games and weren't alive in the 90s or the 80s. I am dating myself here. They did change his car. Kind of. The car that we see in the game looks like a 1970s or 80s Mustang. So he's still driving a Mustang. It's a more modern day one. Sounded like the V8. But they changed the car. Was it necessary? Considering that they updated everything, yeah, I'd say that was a necessary change. Give me a second. Hope I'm not coming down with a cold. Next is the transition from the fog world to the nightmare world. Honestly, the way they did it in the first Silent Hill, and I think the second one as well, was masterful. I can't think of any other word. It fit the town so well. This time, it just felt generic. Just vines growing out of his hand and going up the wall and changing the environment. It was kind of... I mean, we've seen it in countless other horror movies of this type. Um, what are some other noteworthy changes? They changed Mary's name, which is something I have to talk about once we actually get to the story of all this. It, I think that might be the one thing that really bothers me about it. And that creepy doll that Laura was carrying around, and the fact that Pyramid Head didn't glitch. By the way, spoilers all over the place with this. He didn't glitch, and that bothered me. I mean, I was sitting in the theater excited to see the glitch because it is one of the funniest things ever. And he didn't glitch, which is kind of sad. All right, let's move on from there, jump into the story and what this means. We're going to be talking a lot about the theories that I have with Silent Hill 2. And I do talk about a lot of them in my uncut playthrough of the game. If you haven't seen it, then I would recommend going and watching it if you're interested in the game at all and you haven't played it, or you don't have the fortitude to play a scary game. So a lot of those theories are going to be coming into the conversation as well. And I think they'll explain a lot why the movie's not as bad as people actually think it is. I mean, if you just read the back of the box for the game and that's the only description you've got, or you played it at a surface level, then yeah, I guess it's a bad movie. But you also only understood it at a surface level. So, you know? So what does this mean for the story of Silent Hill? We have to jump back to Mary. She's the star of the show. She's not just the star of the show. I would argue she's the center of the game as well. Not just James is going to go find her, but she's the catalyst of everything happening. Now, her name change. Her full name in the movie is now Mary Angela Laura Crane. Or it might be Mary Laura Angela Crane. It's one of those two. The names are the same. The order I can't quite remember. The Angela part, okay, weird. That's how they tied Angela into the movie. The Laura part, I could see that, I guess. That's a middle name of some sort. The part that bothered me the most is the Crane part. See, if you've gone a little bit deeper into into Silent Hill 2, you know that Mary's maiden name is Shepherd, and that's important. That's really important. The town of Silent Hill has 4 founding families. You had the Shepherds, you had the Holloways, you had the Fitches, and you had, God, what's their name? Starts with the Bartletts. You had the Bartletts. And they had these contracts where they were trying to keep some evil demons away, evil spirits, whatever you want to call them. And they did this by sacrificing usually their firstborn child. And this goes on for generations and generations and generations. Now, in the movie, they basically replaced the Shepherds with the Cranes. And the reason I don't like this for the most part is Silent Hill does have a sister city, or a neighboring city, known as Shepherd's Glen. The Shepherd family also founded that town, and they were basically under the exact same contracts. Whatever it is you feel about Silent Hill Homecoming, it is part of the story, and that means Shepherd's Glen is part of the story. With the Shepherds being a founding family of Silent Hill, and then going and founding Shepherd's Glen as well, The curse just kind of follows them. With that said, I've always figured that Mary Shepard Sunderland is part of the founding families of Silent Hill. And that's where it becomes a little bit less about James and more about her, where it's not so much the town that is torturing James, it's Mary herself torturing James. Presenting things that she thinks that he wanted her to be after she got sick. Being sexy, Maria, are the nurses more than likely being the only other females that he actually interacted with. The way she felt tied down, and you know, the monsters in the story in the movie actually give this a slightly different perspective. We always see there's one of them. We always saw the monsters as her being tied to her bed. But what if that particular monster is actually her being tied to the order and she can't get away? Which means we have to talk about the order. The order... One of the biggest things people complain about this movie is, why is the order in the movie? It wasn't in the game. Well, that's where you're wrong. The order is in the game. They are in Silent Hill 2. We don't see them, but their presence is all over the place. We see it on the cop cars. We see their symbol on the cop cars. We see it in the hotel. I think there's a few other places we actually see their symbol. And when you get down to it, Silent Hill isn't necessarily a physical place. I mean, it is a physical place, but it is also the people who run it are the people that live there. Basically, the order. The order is Silent Hill. So everything that they did, all the sacrifices, them trying to bring back their God, the things that they did to Mary, that is part of Silent Hill. And with Mary being a shepherd, or in this case a crane, still one of the founding members or founding families of the town, she is beholden to these ridiculous rituals that they have. And this is where the Angela part comes in. Now, I could say some surface level crap and say Angela's story is tragic and dad and brother did XYZ to her. We're not going to use actual terms to not piss off the YouTube gods. Mother was basically a culprit in it as well. She just kind of let it happen. And we can then say it's ridiculous that they took Angela out of the movie, the way we know her in the game. Now, Angela being one of Mary's names, and then when you see what they did to her at these order meetings, the trauma's still there. The psychological damage that they did to her is still there. I did mention that the founding families sacrificed their firstborns. Let's go take a look back at the first Silent Hill. Not just the movie, but the game as well. After whatever happened to Alessa, the burning, and the town essentially catching on fire, at that point, I'm going to assume they probably stopped sacrificing their firstborns like that. But sacrifices still had to be made. So the Looney Bin thinks. So they stopped sacrificing the life. They stopped killing them. But they start to sacrifice the body and subsequently the mind. And that's what happened to Mary. She would, from what I gathered, had to go to these meetings once a month, maybe. It seemed like it happened pretty frequently. And it happened since she was a girl. Kind of like Angela from the games. And they sacrificed her body to the Order. I think that's going to be the most PG way of saying this. So the trauma was still there. And then we learn about her illness. Now, they never say exactly what Mary's illness is, ever, in the games. We, and myself included, just kind of surmised it was a cancer, that some type of cancer got her. I always thought it could have been a, like melanoma or something that they just couldn't stop, especially back in the 90s or the 80s or the 70s. You're more likely to die from a melanoma than not. Like today we can control it for the most part, but 30, 40, 50 years ago, no shot. You were done. So they explain her illness in the movie, and what it is a kind of drug that has essentially taken away her free will and has started wreaking havoc on her body. And that's what makes her ill and causes her to be bedridden. Interesting take. That's an interesting take. It's a little bit more on the, I wouldn't say it's supernatural. There are definitely drugs that can do that out there. I mean, I'm not a pharmacist or a doctor or a chemist, but I could imagine that there are chemicals out there that will do just that to somebody, especially if they're taken over the course of their life. So it was interesting to see how they handled her illness. I got to swing back for just a bit. One thing that did bother me was James and Mary were never married in this movie. They were just dating, which is kind of lame, but it is what it is. I'm not going to spoil the whole movie for you, but there's going to be like a ton of spoilers in here nonetheless. We've already talked about the Order, and we've talked about Shepherd's Glen and how it ties in, and how I believe Mary's actually the one pulling the strings in James's nightmare. Now the Pyramid Head thing. This is going to be controversial. One, I really love the fact that they use the exact same helmet design for Pyramid Head, or the Red Pyramid, that they used the past two movies. It really ties him to the town. Now, a lot of people are usually upset that Pyramid Head shows up in Homecoming, and I think he shows up in a bunch of the other games as well. The Homecoming one makes sense. If you've played the game and you're paying attention to the game and paying attention to the story, Pyramid Head is also known as the Executioner in Silent Hill, which means however long ago, a few hundred years ago or whatever it was, this was the man who would kill people, say during the witch hunts or something. So his legend, his legacy is part of the town. So it makes sense that if somebody who is a founding member of the town or from that family is involved in this particular curse, that he would show up. Which makes more sense knowing that Mary's maiden name is Shepherd, and in Homecoming you're dealing with the Shepherd family. So him being there Doesn't make a difference. Now, how he is James is what I found interesting. And I think this is where the artist angle comes in. This movie was really good at showing how James and Mary met, what their life was like before her illness, the fact that he moved to Silent Hill. And that is the important part about Pyramid Head. That James moved to Silent Hill, which means he spent time there. He more than likely went to the Historical Society, where he probably saw a painting or a depiction of the executioner. And as an artist, interpreted it as something different. So there's a scene in the movie where he has done a self-portrait where he looks angry, distressed, all the other negative feeling words, and he paints a red pyramid over his head, trapping himself. So I thought that origin, how he is in the pyramid mask, was kind of interesting, because the only thing we ever get from the game and from a bunch of other surface level things is Pyramid Head is supposed to be his retribution or his punishment that he thinks he deserves. But why? Why? Where does he come from? Well, as I said, if you've played the game and paid attention to the story, that's the executioner, and he always went after the bad people. So this makes sense, why he saw himself in that manner, that the last thing that he saw of his paintings was a red pyramid over his head. So I thought that was fantastic. That they did a really good job tying that in. I'm just about done here, because I think the last thing I need to talk about is Mary's death and the way this movie ended. Now, once again, on the surface, we see the video of him smothering her, and she dies. Same thing happens here, but the difference is without saying it, she basically asked James to kill her. Now, some people will say he only wanted to kill her because he wanted his life back and blah, 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 blah. And he says as much in the game. But Mary also says a few times that she wanted the pain to end, that she wanted James to help her in the pain. She basically asked James to put an end to her. She even says that she's not mad at him, that she wanted the pain to end, which means at some point in some conversation that they had, this is something that came up. So some people are like, well, that completely ruins the story that she asked him. She asked him in the game. She actually asked him in the game, just not as directly. It's a blink and you missed it moment. But what made the scene so tragic was he starts bawling because he doesn't want to do this. He wants to save her. But he hasn't come to the realization that she has, that her life is over. So he, not with a pillow, but with a wet rag that he used to clean some blood off of her nose because she suffers from nosebleeds. He puts it over her mouth and her nose, and then she puts her hands over his. So it becomes less of a murder and more like assisted sleep. I think that's the best way to say it. It is assisted sleep. Like I said, I'm trying to appease the YouTube gods here. And she passes. The one thing the movie doesn't explain, that the game doesn't explain, is how the hell does James get a corpse out of the hospital and into his car? Why doesn't anybody stop him? That, like, I don't get it. That I don't understand that. And that's a gripe with both the game and the movie. And the same thing happens. He takes a corpse out of the hospital and puts it in his car. And no one stopped him. No one. Which brings us to the end of the movie and the game, as well as the beginning of the movie and the game. They chose the water ending. And there couldn't have been a better ending for them to choose. The reason I say that this is the ending and the beginning, if you've watched my series, I said James, after Mary died, did not enter Silent Hill alive. He was already dead. Which brings me to a different theory with this movie, which I'll talk about in a second here. He got to Silent Hill with Mary in the car to take her to their special place. And he drove it off the pier and took the long swim. He starts the game off dead. And in the movie, when he gets there, when we start seeing the nightmare stuff, we start seeing the fog world, he's already dead. So them choosing the water ending or the water beginning, however you want to see it, makes total sense for the story and almost canonizes that that ending. Because, I mean, for me, the water ending is canon. Though it's more the canon. Oh, look, there it is. It's more the canon beginning. Because the way the story was written and the writers themselves said for the game, there's no definitive ending. But I think a lot of people refer to the water ending as the canon. That's the definitive ending. Yeah, that's... Oh, last thing. After watching the movie and thinking about the game, I kind of came to the conclusion that he is looking for Mary, and he does regret what he did. He regrets helping her, and he regrets the alcoholism. He regrets walking away from her in the movie, which he does in the game as well, but he does in the game after she tells him that she's hideous and she doesn't want to see him again. So he walks away. So either story, he walks away. One at her behest and the other at his. The story becomes less about him looking for redemption. Instead, it's more him accepting that he's dead. He's basically traveling through a limbo space. And she's trying to guide him to her because she loves him and he loved her. He still loves her. And all they wanted to do was be together forever. Which, with the water ending, they now are. So yeah, that's kind of my take on what they did with the story. I don't think the changes they made were particularly bad. I just think them changing Shepard to Crane really kind of irks me a bit. I'm fine with the order being in there. It's clear in the games that the Shepards are part of the order, and as a founding family, that she would have something to do with them. And in the game, she never drops her maiden name. So that says something as well. Especially back then. Like, in today's world, maybe they don't. But if we're talking 70s, 80s, 90s, they're probably dropping their maiden name. But unless there's some deep-seated reason not to. And being part of the Order is definitely a deep-seated reason not to drop the maiden name. The visuals of the movie were great. The music, it fit for the most part. Casting wasn't too bad. The things they changed are the things they changed. And like I said, if you pay attention to the game, the changes aren't that bad. So how do I feel about the movie overall? As I stated at the beginning of this, it's a movie. It's not a bad movie. It's not a good movie. And that's like most horror movies to begin with. Like, I honestly don't think I've seen a good horror movie ever. And I watched a fair amount of horror movies. They're kind of like comedies. Or maybe that's me. I don't know. But it doesn't deserve a lot of the hate that it's getting. It's a different take on the Silent Hill 2 story. And it actually fills in more plot holes to the game than I think a lot of people realize. It's a movie. And if you refute half the things that go on in here, then there's still loop theory. This could have just been another take on that. So, did I like it? Yeah. Yeah, it wasn't too bad. Would I pay to watch it again? No. Will I watch it when it's on streaming? Yeah. Yeah, it wasn't that bad of a movie. So, that's my take on Return to Silent Hill. I didn't want to just sit here and rage bait everybody and scream, and if that's your method of getting views or notoriety, is just being angry about everything and damning every work that somebody does, then good for you, but I'm going to be a different voice. I know this game, and I know the story, and the movie may have strayed pretty far away from the game itself, but it didn't stray too far away from the lore and the story of Silent Hill as a whole, and I think that was the focus of this. Like I said, this video went way longer than I thought it would. It's gonna be totally uncut, so yeah, that's it. Return to Silent Hill. It was a movie. I'll see you guys next time.